everyone. Welcome to the Tennis Coaches Support Network YouTube channel. We've got a special guest here today. We've got Cameron Pope. It might be a name you've not heard of, but you'll be hearing a lot about it in the future. Cameron is son of a good friend of mine, Adam Pope, who does the commentary for Radio Yorkshire for Leeds United. So he's a big Leeds United fan when he's doing his commentary. He's a big Everton fan when he's back home. He's got some torn loyalties at the moment, hasn't he, Cameron?
He does. It's just his luck that there's three teams in a relegation battle, and he has an affinity to two of them. So I'm not sure how that one's going to pan out for him, but it'll be a busy end to the season, as it always does tend to be when he's following it.
In terms of his football genes, Everton and Leeds, did that filter down to you? Are you an Everton or a Leeds fan?
No. So, I mean, you might just be able to see a couple of Huddersfield Town crests in the background. So I was born in Huddersfield. I live in Leeds now, coincidentally, but no. So I had influence in my family from Everton, from Manchester City, and I was sort of led towards both, and I was able to kind of flip between a few of them growing up. But I think there comes a time, probably when you go into high school, that you're like, right, I'm going to settle on one team now, and that was going to be my local team. It was who my friends supported. So no, I'm a Huddersfield fan. But I'm in this sort of torn loyalties kind of zone where, I can't really enjoy, like my fellow Huddersfield Town fans, the demise of Leeds United, because it affects my old man as well. So I've kind of got a vested interest in both clubs, and I do want them both to do well.
That's one of the beauties of football, that you find fans of teams all over the place, and they're independent in their thinking, and sometimes they support what their family supported, and sometimes they go against the grain. So it's really nice to see that you've got some independence there, and that you've helped support Huddersfield financially by being one of the few people who bought one of their crests. So.
I was going to say, someone has to, don't they? So yeah, more than a few. Like I think that became a bit of a lockdown hobby. But no, there's certainly worse teams to support right around this moment.
So Cameron, I sort of came across you because I follow Adam, his social media. He's very, very big on his family. So lovely posts about his wife, lovely posts about what are these things you get at Christmas? The calendars, the advent calendars.
The advent calendars, yeah.
He's got loads of bottles of beers everywhere, and he follows. He's very proud of you. And is it your sister Denise? Is it Denise?
Denise is my mum. Danielle is my sister, and so she's danced a lot competitively in the last few years. So yeah, that's probably what you've seen come through.
Danielle, the dancer, Denise, the mum, Cameron. So Cameron's followed you, him taking you to matches, and I think you went off and studied. Didn't you go abroad to study? You studied languages, right?
That's right. So I studied in Liverpool, which is my dad's ancestral home anyway, really. So it was kind of a family thing anyway. And then so I did 4 years. I did French, Spanish, and Italian. And it was an interesting one because I got into it purely by accident. I think everyone has that niche at school, and I quite enjoyed school. Like, I quite liked learning. I'm like deep rooted nerd. Like, joining me on the bookshelf of my football shirts is my book collection. It's like that's never died. But I think what I really enjoyed was languages. At high school, I went to a school that sort of specialised in them, and I found them really fun. And I found that I had a bit of an aptitude for them. I think everyone has that kind of subject area. And anyway, we got to 13, and it was time to pick what we call your options, your GCSE subjects. And so there's various rules. There's some core subjects you have to take, like your maths and your English. And then you got a few choices. And my school, one of the rules was you have to take a language and you have to take a technology. I'm rubbish with technology, John T. I'm so bad. I mean, I actually changed this light bulb the other day, and that's like the biggest technological advancement in my life for about 10 years. So I was going to do anything I could to avoid doing woodwork or something like that. And they said, if you take 2 languages, you can skip the DT. So I thought, great, okay. And then did that, went to college, picked up Italian on the side. And then by the time I got to uni, if I didn't want to study languages, I was going to struggle because there was nothing really else. So I'd only studied them for the last year. And so I went to Seville in France. I went to like Provence region of the southeast of France for my first 6 months and studied in Aix-en-Provence. And then I went to Seville for the final 6 months and studied at the university over there before coming back and finishing off.
The reason I was interested in that is because you're not here just because you're son of a friend of mine. You're here because really interested in your journey into commentary, tennis commentary specifically. So the Tennis Coaches Support Network, we've got 1,000 tennis coaches and looking at all angles of tennis. And you found your way from a footballing family and a commentary family through languages to tennis commentary. So how did you get from studying languages at university in lovely parts of the world to coming back here to Yorkshire, which is just as lovely, by the way? But how did you get into commentary when you got back here? So I think a lot of people would like to get into it. How did you get into it?
So I mean, I think it is a hard sort of sector to get into, and it massively helps if you've got a dad that's doing it. You've got to be plainly honest, and I'd like to think that it's accessible to those that don't. I think I definitely would have found it harder, but then that was what gave me the introduction to it, because my dad, when he has now been commentating on BBC Radio Leeds for about 15 years now. But I'm 25 now. When I was about 5, my dad had just made the switch from being a builder's merchant to being a commentator, and he was freelancing. He'd only done it sort of for hospital radio on a voluntary basis to that point, and then he started freelancing for the BBC. And so essentially he does what I do now in football, which is he'd go around to various Yorkshire grounds, wherever they sent him, bit of a gun for hire, and I'd go with him as a little kid. And so that was like the best thing ever. You're going like you're in like your smart trousers with your dad going to the football and the posh seats. And he thought,
the smart trousers with pockets and all the.
Oh, isn't it? I know. I must have had a really warped sort of view of what football was like at that age, because that's how I tended to go. And so I thought it was the best thing ever. And I thought, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And I remember I had like it's like what you call a modern day Subbuteo, like a little super striker where you can push the heads and the ball. My mum's got cassettes of me, video cassettes of me commentating on those and everything. And I've got a CD at home from I think it was my 9th birthday. And my dad, I think he had a word with his superiors, and he got me a seat in the press box at Huddersfield, and he just recorded me and him did a commentary together. So it was always sort of set up that way. And then when I left university, I hadn't commentated in years really. I'd not really done any. I sort of thought I wanted to be a translator, decided I didn't. Thought I wanted to be a languages teacher, decided I didn't. And two good careers, but it wasn't really me. And then so while I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I carried on being an editor, which had been my part-time job at uni. And my dad said, "Why don't you just do a bit of commentary on the side? You used to think you'd like this, see if you enjoy it." So like him, I went to hospital radio in Huddersfield, and I started doing audio descriptive commentary, just obviously for free, for visually impaired fans in the stadium. After a while, because I was doing that pretty regularly, I started at a place that does online commentaries for bookmakers, like Bet365, that sort of thing. So that was paid, and that was my first sort of paid experience in it, really. And then
that audio descriptive commentary, what's different to regular commentary for audio descriptive commentary? Is there any specific terminology you have to do, or what's the difference for us regular listeners?
I think the main thing would be, and there was no formal training in this, although I understand you can actually get it. I think the main thing is just painting more of a picture, because for radio, and that's why it's my favorite medium. It's you are like the audience's eyes and ears, and so you are painting the whole canvas. And so you might just take a little bit more time than you would for a non-audio descriptive commentary to put a bit more description into colors. Like, are they vivid? Are they is it like an electric blue, or is it like a salmon pink? You might talk about the background and the backdrop. I think these are important in other styles of commentary, but I think especially so when you're there for a visually impaired person, it just makes them. I think it can put them in the moment a little bit more, because for those that aren't aware, at Huddersfield where I did it, but this is the practice at most places, the fans will be sat on the front row and they'll have like a headset and it links up to you, and so they'll be there and they'll feel the atmosphere, but it just means that they can picture it a little bit more. So I think just going a little bit more overboard on the description and trying to paint the background as much as the foreground.
I think that makes you a better commentator all round, though. So I've started doing these watch-along broadcasts, and I watched back on my first one. I thought, I'm not saying anything there. And you need to fill the gaps with some of this description, and just things like, instead of saying that the clay is red, to give it a bit more descriptive. It's salmon red or salmon pink, as you said, just a bit more descriptive. Yeah, it brings it all out. But it takes some practice, right? So all those demo reels you did when you were 9.
Well, that's it.
It's
been more and more demo reels, and so I, after 2 years of doing those commentaries for the bookmakers, I was cutting down clips of myself. I always recorded myself every game. I record it and save it, and a lot were just not playable back, and you'd listen back and you'd think, I don't know, but it was good because I had my old man to go to, and he'd say, in a very nice way, try to do this less, try to do maybe this a little bit more, and I needed that, and I could sort of self-assess it a little bit too. And then, so when I got some good clips together, I pieced them all together. This is a year ago, at the close of last season, and I sent out a load of tapes just to people, just to see what, are you fancy taking anyone on, just freelance, that sort of thing. I honestly didn't expect anything to come of it. And I must have emailed about 30, 40 different people. And lo and behold, one guy got back to me. And I remember being a random Tuesday afternoon. I was on my lunch break and I got a random call from this guy, and from this guy in London. He said, I need a reporter for the Fulham match on Saturday. Can you do it? So I and this is where I've had such a helping hand from having my dad already in the industry, because he was able to help me just get set up in a different way. It's he's not there to hold your hand, but any questions, you've got someone, you've like a quick IT support man you can go to. As it happened, I was able to borrow a kit from someone, and these are the things that aren't really accessible to people who are coming in, I guess, or would be more of an obstacle. So I feel really grateful for that. It was a lot of hard work too, but I think it would be remiss of me not to accept that helped. But anyway, I had two gigs from them initially, and I thought, well, if I can just get a third, that means that's a success, because it means that they've kept me on, and I've kept doing it actually all the way through the season. So I'm gonna have my last one on Saturday. I'm not quite sure where yet, but and so it's been really fortunate. But as for tennis, which is why we're here, I sort of figured that, I've always sort of wanted to differ from my dad in the way that I want commentary to be my sole job, really, because I'm still editing. I've gone down part-time since then to accommodate my commentary, but I want to get rid of that fully eventually. I think it's a good job, but I wouldn't say it's my passion. And my boss doesn't watch this, but I'm going to say that I think eventually that's the plan. I think everyone knows that. But if you just do football solely, that's quite difficult, because you've got Saturday, maybe Sunday, you might have a Tuesday night, 3 matches, you've got to be earning a lot of money to make a living off that. And so if you get to the top of the tree, fair play, but that's a long way away. And so if you do 2 sports, obviously twice as many opportunities. If you do 2 sports that have differing time schedules, like football and tennis, then that's a real big opportunity, because tennis, as we know, most of the games are Monday, Tuesday for the opening rounds of tournaments, and they stretch on through the week. And it's the longest season in professional sport, really, January to November, thereabouts. So and it just so happens that I love tennis. So it was a no-brainer. I had the knowledge from watching it and playing it as a kid. And so, and you need the technical knowledge, really. I think you need the terminology. And so really it was a no-brainer. It was just trying to get in. But thankfully, once I had the name of the BBC that I worked for, that gave me a bit more credibility, so I could speak to people and say, look, and I think I mocked up a demo of me commentating just over some pictures, I think from Amazon, of an English Swiatek game, and sent it off to some people, and they said, oh, it's less competitive, I think, tennis commentary. And I think that, I don't know, they must have been in a good mood that day, because they said, oh, we'll give you a chance, we'll give you a go. And in about February time, I went from there.
So you mocked up some pictures from Amazon.
I did a screen grab of a WTA match from the tour finals in November. It's November, wasn't it? Yeah. In Guadalajara. And it was Iga Swiatek. I can't remember who she was playing now. Arena Sabalenka, I think it was, and might have been. And I just recorded myself doing the first set commentary, and I just cut down a highlights reel. And in fact, no, I sent the whole thing. It was like 40 minutes, and I just sent it off, and just to see. And I think because they probably looked at it and thought, God, this guy's a bit keen, isn't it? But you've got to show a bit of keenness, and it worked. It was pretty rusty, and I look back at it now, and and I hope that in the 6 months that have followed and the matches that I've done, I've improved. But there's a starting point that said, this is promising enough, and they were kind enough to give me a go. Just on like the earlier rounds of some of the 250 matches, and I felt very fortunate, but then also it gave me a lot of time to prepare and try and get myself ready for obviously television commentary, which is a whole different kettle of fish and something I hadn't done before.
I think if you show an appetite and an initiative, when we're coaching kids, what's more important to me is the listening and the effort than necessarily the physical talent. So I think if you're showing the appetite, the effort, the initiative, as is what you did with taking some pictures, mocking up a commentary, that goes a long way, because I'm sure that you find on the day things crop up, technical problems, a rain delay, someone's injured, they've switched the match, it's a different venue, etc., etc. And you've somehow got to think on your feet and come up with it. So well done for showing some initiative and getting your foot in the door of the tennis world. You said you feel it's not that competitive, but I think loads of us would love to be doing tennis commentary.
I think it is competitive. I don't think on the level of football, which is uber competitive. So I think
Gotcha.
any commentary is is something that a lot of people would like to do, and I think I always say I'm hardly down the mines. I feel very fortunate to be able to do this, and it's not a bad existence. I feel very grateful. I don't think there's the same level of, and I think because purely there's not as much tennis coverage. Football is just everywhere, all the time, every country, every platform. Tennis is getting more and more widespread in terms of its broadcasting, but I don't think it's got the same boom as in everyone definitely wants to do it, purely because I think that those of us who love tennis have the knowledge, but I don't think that it's as big it certainly isn't as big a community as the football community. Yeah. So those that can are fewer in number, I feel, and between those who do it, it's still competitive, and it's hard to I imagine hard to get those gigs and to work way up the chain. I'm at the very, very base of the ladder, at the foot of the ladder at the moment, if you like. So but no, I think it's nice because it's football commentary is the main one that everyone thinks of, but then it's nice to have these other sort of communities you can go into which are a bit more tight knit, and it's good fun.
When I'm watching Amazon Prime or Sky Eurosport, you've got reporters courtside, people in the studio, color analysts. They're there at the event. Is it like that for you? Are you there at the event courtside? Do you have an army of assistants to provide you with data to make sure you sound really credible?
So I commentate for the WTA, and they're really good with providing you with stats, with press packs, with information. Their website is brilliant because you've got all the information that you need, or down for the top 200 players. Because when you're doing the 250s, which is what I've done so far, obviously you'll have most of the players will be probably outside the top 30, and we'll be down to 100, and then you'll get a few from the next 100 down. You might get a few wild cards who may be lower down, but then they'll give you, they're always in hand to give you pronunciations, that sort of thing, which is obviously I think as a commentator is one of the most important things. The
pronunciations.
Name player, it really drives me. I don't get it right every time myself, but it drives me insane when high profile names especially they got wrong. It's a bit different if it's someone that someone doesn't know, but I think you should make that effort. And so the WTA are really good at furnishing that. They take a lot of pride in I think in the product. But also, there's an onus on it to do it yourself. I mean, because it's there is help and everything, and there's producers, and you have and you're in a studio, and you're mic'd up to the Netherlands, who are doing your sound checks to make sure that it's all bases are kind of covered, and you've got a number of screens you can see. It's on my court. It's usually 2 cameras, so one camera for the action, one for a replay. But then it makes it just so much more comfortable than it could be. It's obviously, I don't know how many years that the tour coverage has been going. I've been watching it for the last couple, so it must have been much longer, but it's a well-oiled machine, and that just it takes so much pressure off you, and you can just focus on your job. It does help.
You can self-inflict the pressure though, Cameron. So I've started doing these watch-along commentaries for Game to Love, and I was commentating on Madison Keys and Maria Sakkari. And in a former life, I used to work in software, and I had a partner in Dubai called Sakkari. So the whole match I was calling Maria Sakkari. And this guy was in the chat saying, it's not Sakkari, it's Sakkari. In the end, I just kept calling her Maria. but the pronunciation with the best intentions can catch you out. So how do you handle all these pronunciations? I end up having them written here and there.
Well, I must say there definitely will have been some that I get wrong, or sometimes I will, if I say a name 50 times in a broadcast, or at least one of the times I'm going to say it completely different to all the other times I said it. And so my first match was the Chinese number 6 at the time, I think, Wang Chung. So she used to be the world number 9 or number 12. She was highly placed, dropped out of, I think, the top 200, came back. But it's not written like that. If it's written as an Englishman, you'd read it, or an English speaker, should I say, you'd read it, and it looks like like Wang Chiang, but it's not. It's Wang Chung, and so and what's really handy is if you go onto the WTA website, some people will know this, but you go on and they get the players saying saying their name for you. So hello, my name is Wang Chung, and so it was brilliant. So, but what I did was I always write my cues in the sense that when they're coming onto court, I'll say, Sara Sorribes Tormo got to the 3rd round of Guadalajara last year. She's looking to go one further on the clay this season, something like that. But I will write the name if it's a difficult one phonetically. And at the top of my notes, I should have got that actually, but yeah, I will write in big letters at the top of them, not the actual player's name, but how it's spelt phonetically, because then I'll have a panicked moment at 4-3 in the second set, break point, and I'll look down and I think, I can't remember the name. And I look down and I'll need to see it just written out phonetically. And a lot of the time it's for stress as well. So for the 21-year-old Varvara Gracheva, it looks like Varvara, like you might say Barbara. And so, but it's Varvara. And so I'll put a big double line underneath the middle syllable. And so it's just little things like that. Everyone's got their own styles, but I like to have big, colorful notes with a lot of diagrams on them. And so that definitely helps me.
So would you say that's your biggest challenge, getting the pronunciation right, or any for commentating in tennis compared to football, what do you see as the challenge there? Because I've found when I do this watch along commentary, there's lots of quiet spots, where they're changing ends, or you're waiting for the serve, or someone's checking the line. There's lots of quiet spots in there, and these things can go on for a long time. So I find one of the challenges is filling in the space. But what about you with tennis compared to football? What's the challenges for you?
I don't. The names definitely isn't, because I mean, one thing that's much easier in tennis is the recognition of players, because in football you've got 22 at any given time. In tennis, I don't do doubles, and so I've only ever had 2, so that is a lot easier. The thing that's hard though is the fact that matches can last so much longer. So I mean, you're looking at about the 2-hour mark for a women's 3-setter, for a best of 3 sets, should I say. A lot of them will be done in straight sets. But I've had a few that have gone on towards 2 3/4 hours, maybe 3. I know Emma Raducanu had a 3-hour 36 one, didn't she, against Darius Ellis, and that didn't even get to a conclusion. So, you can be there a long time. And so actually I spoke to another commentator when I was getting ready for my debut sort of tour match, and he was a commentator that's done it for years, and he said, don't use all your information in the first few games of the first set. I was sort of reeling it off like I would at a football match quite quickly. But he says in football, you've got 90 minutes, in tennis, you might be sat here for 3 hours, and you don't want to get to the third set and think, well, I've got nothing to pad it out with now. So really it's like choosing when to spread the information out and choosing what's important and when. And so I've kind of got into the system now where I'll start off with how a player has done maybe this season, followed by last season, maybe like their previous at this tournament, and that'll be the first set. Second set, I might move it on to sort of the trophies that they've won, the finals that they've been in. Did he play doubles? Final set, if it goes to 3 sets, like what's their dog called, their favorite bands, what American sitcoms did they like? I'll try and sort of put it in an order of importance, and that means I'm a bit more disciplined now, I think, than I was at the start in making sure I have something to talk about through the whole duration.
So this is the Pope method, is it? The Pope method. You've got all your information for each set already lined up. There I was.
I guess I don't know. I would love to know what my old man does in that sense. He's probably got his own way of doing it. But yeah, that was definitely the biggest challenge I think that I've learned.
I don't get to hear him that often because I can't get radio Yorkshire down here in Watford. So, but yeah, that's interesting. The Pope method, because I was commentating yesterday on Jabeur and Bencic, and they had a rain delay. So I had an hour of putting the roof up. it's a little bit different for me because there's a live chat there, so people are chatting, you can ask some questions. But if you're effectively on your own, that's a lot of time filling to do. So the more prepared you can be with these stats and information, really valuable. And it sounds like you do your research even to the point of making sure you go on the WTA site to get their names right. So challenges, great. We've gone through that. What about learning? What have you learned? What's your biggest learning from doing tennis commentary? What's the thing that surprised you, or you learn, or you'd be talking to someone you say, you know what, this is amazing about tennis. What have you learned along the way, Cameron?
I think there's a few things that I've picked up on. One thing that surprised me, and I've been watching tennis for years, and I never twigged, but just how short changeovers are. You know, when you're actually working, and by the time I've taken my headphones off, I've sat down, I've maybe stood up to stretch my legs, I've had a sip of my coffee, put it back down again, and then you'll hear time. And I think, wow, you know, I haven't left my seat. And these two players have been going hell for leather for an hour and a half. So I think I've got so much more. I always had respect for tennis players' conditioning, and you'll know more about this from your coaching than me, Jonty. But they're just such well-oiled machines in the sense that they go and go and go for hours. And another thing that I learned is that this was always stuff I felt aware of as a fan, or someone who consumed tennis, but just how little break there are between matches too. You know, I did the clay tournament in Istanbul the other week. I commentated on that, and you know, there was for Varvara Gracheva, there was less than 24 hours between the two matches I did on her. And I think, like, you know, she might have had training between that as well. There's so little let up, especially when you've had something like a rain delay as we had in Istanbul. And so I've got the respect I have for players for the quick turnarounds that they have, and just how, you know, much ground they cover in those few days. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've learned, because I felt like the advantage of me going into tennis was that I felt like I knew a lot about the sport already. And I would say just as well, how many players turn up to tournaments and obviously don't have a coach. You sort of take it for granted. We hear a lot about coaching in tennis, but obviously it's so competitive, even at the challenger level. You know, you've seen in the men's game, players like Botic van der Zandschulp going deep at the US Open from being, you know, way off in terms of ranking, and it just goes to show that the quality is there. But it's hard to make a living, of course, and so, or harder to make a living, and so, you know, a lot of places can't afford to bring a coach with them, that sort of thing. And so I have a lot of respect ultimately for those two who have the iron will to keep going and to try and forge a career in professional tennis, and you know, to go out there and do it yourself. And it's akin to a boxer going to the corner and having to sort himself out in the break, isn't it? You know, so I think a lot of things have given me more respect, even more respect for tennis players.
Yeah, I'm on some football forums talking about Leeds, and occasionally we talk about comparisons between, you know, tennis and football in terms of how difficult a sport it is. You know, if you're a 17-year-old making it in football, the team signs you up, all your physios looked after, your training, your nutrition, your travel, you get decent money. If you're a 17-year-old trying to make it at tennis, you have to pay for your tickets, your hotels, your flights, your coach, your physio. And as you said, it's a really long season. It's 42, 45 weeks a year traveling, trying to dust yourself down when you've lost a match and get back up. It's really, it's a really tough sport. And as you said,
it is a lot. It's a lot, isn't it? Really, and we said as well how long the season is too. I don't know if the casual fan appreciates just like it just never stops tennis, really, does it? And that's why we love it, because it's great. It's always there to consume, but it must take its toll.
I tell you, when I hear these top Premiership managers complaining about playing 2 matches a week, and you're watching players like, what was her name? You pronounce it better than me.
Varvara Gracheva, and she's just the one that I had the experience of. There's so many. I think Cam Norrie, didn't you play 4 sets in 5 sets in 24 hours earlier this month or something like that? And so it's, you know, it does really irk me now when we see in football sometimes I think a lot of it is mind games, but the talk of the scheduling and stuff, and you think, well, you know, I'm not saying it's not hard, but there's other sports that have it far tougher.
And part of the challenge of it as well is you don't know how long the matches are, so you're waiting to go on for your match at 4 o'clock or something, and the match before you is dragging on and dragging on and dragging on, and there's a rain delay, and before you know it, you're not on until 10 o'clock. You finish at 1 in the morning. You've still got your press duties to do, your media coverage, sponsor stuff, and it's a really long, challenging, you know, physically demanding, and you learn a lot as a tennis player in terms of scheduling your time and managing yourself. So Yeah, great to see those learnings are coming through for you. Listen, we're coming towards the end. I can't finish the end of this podcast without finding out. Now, your father, Adam tells me he was the Yorkshire under-14 champion and the Huddersfield. I don't know how much of this is just sort of party talk, but he reckons he was a bit of a tennis player. I've seen him with a picture. I didn't realize he was quite so old because he's got a wooden racket in the picture. But if you were to play Adam now over 3 sets, Cameron, who would win? If you had to play him today, the Cameron Adam the Pope tournament, who would win?
Oh, it'd be over in a flash, John. Honestly, I don't think it would be even a contest. And I'm no great shakes at playing, but we used to play when I was I used to play quite keenly when I was say 14, 15, not to any great level. We just played club tennis, but I've played with that a few times. He never beat me. And so, but
that's not what he said.
Oh no, he'll try his hand at any sport. My dad, he's dead keen for it. But and to be fair, he hadn't played in a long time, probably since that wooden racket that you saw in the picture. It's a great picture. Yeah, he came into it, and I think he played in sort of our second team at the club for a little bit that I was at, just to keep fit, etc. But no, he's definitely a football man who was trying tennis, where I sort of had a bit more of a double existence, so it was okay. But I'm not even the best tennis player in my house. I live with 5 boys, and I'm decidedly in the middle of those. So it gives me even greater appreciation for what the professionals can do, I think.
Listen, thank you so much for your time today, Cameron. So I know you're busy making your mark in the world, whizzing here, there, and everywhere. So I'm looking forward to following your progress, and I hope other people take an interest and start watching your skills at tennis commentary. I'd like to thank your dad for bringing you to our attention. So I love the way that he's so loving to his family and shares your journey. And that, for me, as a fan of football, I've really enjoyed seeing that. And I just wanted to thank you so much for today. I think it's been brilliant for tennis fans and tennis coaches to understand a bit about the commentary side, and for Leeds fans as well to see a little bit about your journey. So, Cameron, thank you so much.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Best luck for the podcast, the coaching, and for Leeds, I guess, as well, for the rest of the season. But yeah, thank you very much, mate.
All right. Cheers, pal. Well, that was an interesting insight from Cameron on his journey from being a young football-loving kid from an Everton household, becoming a Huddersfield fan, football commentator, and now tennis commentator. So we're back in the studio, and we got our godfather of the Pope method, Adam Pope, up in Radio Leeds, the godfather of Leeds United commentary, the Pope method, and the father of Cameron Pope. Adam, how did you find that little session, seeing your son in action, telling us about his life?
Yeah, he gave me far too much credit, though, John T. To be honest, it was great to hear his journey and how relaxed he was talking to you, because, to be quite honest, he's done most of it himself without me. So it's nice for him to give me some credit, but honestly, he really has forged the path. And I think the tennis thing is totally down to him. Absolutely. So if I can help, great. But it was really interesting, John, to hearing his path, because there's bits that, you know, I wasn't aware of, or didn't realize maybe which little influences he's had along the way that have helped him sort of make his mind up, really.
Yeah,
so, it was great.
He struck me as someone who's got his own initiative and comes up with ideas. I love the way that he took the pictures of Swiatek and Sabalenka and did his own little commentary, and then he talks about the super striker stuff. It was brilliant. But I think you do, sometimes we downplay the credit. I think you've been an influence. I can just see it in your feeds and your pictures, how much you care for your family and how much that comes through, and little nudges here or there has really helped him off in the right way. And he seems like a good lad, except for supporting Huddersfield. Seems like a good lad.
Do you know what? It's really good. Really good. I mean, first, the point you make about, you know, trying to nudge in the right way. John, we've spoken a lot over the years, sort of privately, haven't we? And, you know, you talk about your family to me, and obviously the kids that you coach as well. And I think a lot of it, that side of it for me, comes out partly because my parents were divorced and my dad wasn't really around. When he was around, he'd want to come and watch me. And, you know, I just felt that I want my kids to have, hopefully, the support that, you know, whether that be in a physical presence or emotionally or whatever, that maybe that I didn't have. And I think we all feel that way. And I think it's important. And if you can guide them, and it's of any value, because you soon don't become much value to them once they get of a certain age, then hopefully it can help. But yeah, his journey's been quite special, really. And I think his interest in sport has always been there. You know, he loved football from an early age. But the tennis thing was really interesting because I remember going to Sicily with no, we went to Rome, we went to Venice, and we went out to a place called Tarquinia on the west coast of Italy for a holiday with the kids. And we had a few days there, and there was this guy that loved tennis, and he kept saying, worked in a local shop, and he was called, and he said, what did he say? Io respiro tennis. He said, I breathe tennis. I breathe tennis. And I remember Cameron being quite captivated by this guy, and they were talking tennis in sort of a bit of broken English and a bit of, you know, Cameron at the time didn't know Italian, though he's pretty fluent in it now. And that was probably the first time I remember him really being into tennis. And then he played as a young lad with his mates, which I think he mentioned to you, didn't he? And they played on a shale court, which is probably one of the oldest courts in where we live in Huddersfield. And he loved it. So that's where and that was very much, that was pretty organic or self-generating, should I say. It wasn't really anything I particularly had. So it's great to hear him speak with such passion about sport, obviously, that you love and entirely wedded to. So for that, he has to take all the credit himself, definitely. But yeah, really interesting. Just hear him speak to you about his journey is just great. You know, it's just yeah, puts it in perspective that how weird life changes, John, into the choices that we make.
Choices that we make, Adam. So choices that you made. You've like me, you've been around the block a little bit, but you haven't been doing tennis commentary football commentary all your life. So how did you get into commentary? What were you doing before?
Well, I worked as probably like many people. I went to Polytechnic when they existed, John T, in Huddersfield, and I worked. I did history and politics. Came out, didn't know what I wanted to do. Worked in a timber mill for a summer job. I'd done bar work and what have you. And I did the old milk round. If people remember this, that might be listening, which is basically where all the companies used to come round to the polytechnics and universities and offer graduate trainee programs. You try to jump on one. And because I'd done a bit of timber mill, worked in a sawmill, what have you, there was this company, which later became Juicings, which many people will know now. It was under a different guy, it's called Hardcross at the time. And I ended up jumping on board with them, and I got a graduate trainee scheme, which was basically labouring in a yard in Newcastle for a bit, or Gateshead for a bit, and going around the country and a little bit abroad, working for them, working me up the ladder. Hated the industry, to be quite honest. And I did that for about 8 years, but I did all right at it, to be fair, and sort of went up the chain, rep, manager. But while I was doing it, I found I hadn't had any other interest. I had stopped playing football, which I was a decent Sunday league player, if you like. And I'd just didn't have any other interests. And it just came to me I sort of described a bit of Saul on the road to Damascus type thing, where I remember it's not far from where we live now. I was walking down and I thought, what would I like to do? You know, I was living away from home. I was in West Yorkshire. I wasn't back home in the Northwest. So I wasn't really able to go and watch my team, Everton, too much at a weekend. I was working a lot. And so I thought, I wonder if it'd be quite good to have a go at football commentary. So I got in touch with Huddersfield Hospital Radio. And in those days, they used to do the first team games and the reserve games down at Leeds Road, which is their old ground before they moved to where they are now at the John Smith Stadium. It's only like half a mile away. And I just sort of started doing a bit of commentary for that. And it was fairly low risk. You know, it was done for, you know, the patients at the hospital and for those who were impaired of sight. And I just sort of gradually started from there, really, and did that more and more often as a bit of a hobby. And then I thought, wow, do I try and turn it into a career? And that was the difficult bit. And that's probably went on for about 5 years, sort of doing a bit more of that. And I changed careers briefly for a year, went to Bass, the brewing company, and then I made the plunge and thought, right, I'm going to go and do this now. And essentially, Johnny went freelance, and that's sort of how it happened. But the germ was wanting to do something that I enjoyed, and I think that's a maxim I've tried to live by ever since.
And that kind of fills in a bit of a blank for me, because your accent, I can never quite place your accent. You got the kind of, it's not it's not the most exotic of accents, Adam, but you've got this accent that isn't quite Leeds. So where are you from originally?
Yeah, so born in Liverpool at the old Children's Hospital, now knocked down, but I lived on the Wirral all my life, which is, for those that don't know, is just across the water from Liverpool, in between Liverpool and North Wales, in a peninsula, a place called West Kirby, and it was a beautiful upbringing in terms of where to live and grow up. It was great. As I said, my parents split up, which was unusual in those days. In the early 70s, divorce was a bit of a weird thing. It wasn't as commonplace as it is now. So I was a bit of the odd one out at school, in that sense, but it was a lovely place to grow up. So when I was 18, I then moved down south for a year and lived with my dad, and then retook some A levels, and then I got into Huddersfield Poly, which is a polytechnic, and that's why I moved to West Yorkshire in the first place. And I've pretty much been there ever since. Bar a spell in America and sort of moving around, but basically I've had a base there since all my adult life.
Well, I'm glad you made it, because the rare times I can listen to a Radio Yorkshire commentary or Radio Leeds commentary and I can hear you commentating, it's brilliant. And
thank you.
And I was really looking forward to the Take Me Home documentary. And your, hang on a minute, that's not the same commentary as the match, because your commentary at the matches with Noel Whelan chipping in with these get-ins is brilliant. The emotion really comes through. So I think you bring radio to life, and Cameron talking about the same thing with his audio descriptive commentary, really trying to paint a picture and help the listener. So yeah, I'm glad you're here, Adam.
Thank you.
Wanted to just touch a bit more on the things that Cameron was talking about. Did you learn anything from what he was saying? Is there anything in terms of his career? Do you watch his commentaries, and do you think, oh, that's quite, that's a good idea, I'll try that myself? As a dad, I think I'd be looking at my son's stuff. Do you watch his commentaries? Do you listen to it and think that's good, I'm going to use that in my next one?
Yeah, I try and listen to quite a bit of his stuff if I can. We have an internal system here at the BBC where I can sort of go in and if he worked for BBC Radio Sheffield doing a game for them, or for BBC Radio London, which he sometimes do, then I can sort of go back, because often I'm working at the same time. Yeah. Then I can go back and listen to a bit, and we can sort of critique it, or he might or get it for him so that he can use it in a bit of a show reel. So I do listen to a lot of his stuff. Firstly, the thing I would say and is that his standard is really, really high very, very quickly. And that's all down to himself. And the fact that he's willing to talk and listen and take feedback from people who've been doing it for a long time. And I think that's the one thing I've learned. And the fact that he's sat down and spoken to yourself, Jonty, and had a really lovely interview for half an hour, which, I find a lot of people who are, he's 25 now, who are relatively young, they sort of struggle to converse, to be quite honest, these days, and just have a normal sort of conversation with people. I think that's an art that's dying to an extent. So I think what I've learned is that he's pretty fearless, and he's willing to have a go at anything, whether it be football, whether it be crown green bowling, which he's done too, and obviously turning his hand to tennis, which is something I've never done too. So there's something about his character I've learned. What I do see is how he prepares, and he prepares really, really thoroughly. And I know you were trying to make the distinction, weren't you, about radio commentary and audio descriptive, and TV commentary is very, very different. Radio, everybody is visually impaired listening to radio, of course, because we've got to paint the picture, and you keep talking to fill it. There's really no gaps. But TV, you're adding to the pictures, and on the WTA, when he's been working for them, and it's been on Amazon Prime, there's a very distinct way of doing things. You're not really commentating on the point itself, are you? On the mat, you're adding to the pictures around it.
Yes.
People can see the score, people can see what the weather's like, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of it is about your research and your information, but it's got to be decent stuff, not just stats for stats sake, if you like. So his preparation is the other thing that I've really seen that he's very, very good on, and he likes getting, and he's got a good editorial head as well. Because he works as an editor, I think he said too, with another company in Liverpool for some time, and I think having that news head is really, really sound. So what we call the top line. You know, he could see a press release or a news story, and he'd know straight away, yeah, that's the story, not what some people might want it to be, if you like. So those are the things that I see from him and hear from him when I listen to him, as well as his delivery as well. You know,
the tennis commentary and the football commentary, you know, quite different, because tennis, you're all over the place commentating on different players. I think you made the point earlier that, you know, when you're commentating on Leeds, we're talking about the Pope method. Where has the Pope method come from? But when you're commentating on Leeds, well, you commentate on Leeds every match, so you know all the stuff in the background. Whereas Cameron is commentating on different people every match and has to try and get a bit of background there. So you credit to him for all the research he does on getting that and bringing it to life. And we're on screen now, so I don't have to describe that you've got a lemon colored windshield for your microphone, or it's a radiant purple behind you. But okay, so that's that's nice to hear that insight on that. And anything that when he's doing one of these commentaries, I'm sure he won't mind you sharing, but when he's doing one of these commentaries, do you listen to him, you think, oh God, I wouldn't have said it that way? Or is he pretty much, he's on track, he's doing great?
Yeah, vocabulary wise, he's got what it takes. You know, he's never short of a line or a decent word. And I think there's a couple of things that we try and iron out quite early. And I've had him speak to one of my old bosses, a guy called Derm Tanner, who was the first guy to take a chance on me sort of professionally. And Derm's got a really keen ear for especially spotting emerging talent and how to sort of hone it. And I think that there's a couple of things. Delivery, try and sound as natural as possible. Don't try and affect your voice, or even not mispronunciation, but putting stress in the wrong places sometimes. So that's something that I know is a lot when people first start. They try and distort themselves because they think it's a sound that they should be. So try and iron out a little bit of that. And he's taken that on board really well. And also, I think another thing, and we've all been guilty of this over the years, is, and we still hear it a lot, is sort of cliched stuff, to really try and avoid that. You know, the leaping like a salmon sort of stuff, you know, all that sort of stuff. Just try and avoid that if you can. And I don't mean invent new ones, but just describe it as it is, really. Yeah, it's great to have a brilliant line at times, and sometimes you store them up and it's great. And when they work, it's brilliant. But when they don't and they're crowbarred in, it sounds dreadful. It really does. And they would be the two things that I think that if you can get those worked on early, or try and avoid them early on, you're going to be in good habit, you know, going forward.
I've listened to a couple of his, and you can hear, I mean, his first one I listened to his first one that you told me about, and that was great. And he's throwing all this information at it. I think he mentions in the interview I did with him, don't throw all your information straight away. So this is this Pope method of he knows what he's going to be saying in the first set, knows what he's going to be saying in the second, third set. And these matches can go on for a long time. So it's not like a football match where it's 90 minutes. You don't know how long it's going to be. You might get a rain delay. You've got to be chatting the whole way through, keeping the people engaged. And I think he's done a really good job on it. And I'm glad that Robus gets some time with him before he becomes really famous, and we won't get any time with him. So that was a brilliant session with him. Listen, Adam, I can't leave without asking you football stuff and Leeds United related stuff. So I wanted to finish on a bit of a quick fire quiz. Don't know if you can be quick fire, Adam, because you always put so much depth into everything, but I want to finish on a quick fire quiz and get some insight from you and yourself and Leeds and your journey. Is that all right?
Absolutely fine. And before you do that, Johnny, can I just say that part of your interview with Cam was really revealing about tennis and the difference between football. You know, that about the length and then having to maybe stretch it out for an extra 30 minutes or it's not like an extra time thing, which you can sense is coming with football, but to have that, thinking about that as a commentator, it was really difficult to get my head and think, oh, wow, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's really different. I think your knowledge of tennis, obviously, and then Cameron's growing knowledge of tennis, that gave me a bit more of an insight. I thought, wow, yeah, that's a difficult job commentating on tennis if you've suddenly got to do that. I mean, you'll have a wealth of knowledge when you do your walk and talks. You can rely on that, I suppose, can't you, to sort of fall back on, if you like. But yeah, that was quite eye-opening. That was another thing I learned listening to your interview together, was that that is not an easy task if you've got tennis, and as you say, you can change, the matches can change suddenly. You might be thrown onto another match as a commentator, very, very short notice as well, and that really does test your mettle.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of differences to football, but that's one of them, where it's open-ended. There isn't a time to it. It can go on and on and on. And we look back to Wimbledon a few years ago with Isner and Mahut, where it went on for days. They've changed the rules to try and stop that, but that's one of the beauties of it. It's very gladiatorial. You don't have your coaches there to advise you. There's a lot of momentum shifts, and the physical side comes into it as well. It's not like football where you can bring a substitute on. You have to rely on your body somehow to get you through it. So anyway, can't avoid these quickfire questions, Adam.
All right, yeah. All right, go on then.
I got half a dozen of them for you, half a dozen of them. Nothing too controversial, but it gives us a bit of an insight.
Sure.
So you're ready to go. So which do you prefer? Which do you prefer? A home match or an away match?
Wow.
Home match or an away match?
Home match.
Home match. Good. You're a homebody. Next one. Who is the person in your commentary career that you've been most starstruck by? The person you've been most starstruck by?
That I've worked with.
Could be
as
worked
opposed
with.
to interview.
Could be anyone.
I worked with Eddie Gray for 3 years.
Yeah.
So the first time I worked with him, I've got to say it was my first commentary doing Leeds as well, but I was also working with him. So that was, but we became like really decent friends as well over the period. So to say I wasn't a little bit in awe of who I was going to be working with would be a lie, but he's brilliant. What a great guy. So yeah, Eddie Gray.
I was working in Dallas back in 96, 97, and Leeds United came out to the Dallas Cup, and he was over there with Paul Hart, with all these young lads like Paul Robinson and Harry Gill. They played Guadalajara and someone else. And so I met him, chatted to him, met him in the hotel and whatever, and always struck me as a bit of a cheeky guy, but a nice man and a legend, of course. So great. I was starstruck by him as well. So thank you for that one. Right. So since you've been commentating for Leeds, what is something that you've learned about Leeds United since you've been commentating? What have you learned that you thought, God, I didn't really appreciate that? What have you learned about Leeds United since you've been doing the commentary? Because you're an Everton fan.
Wow. Yeah.
What have you learned about Leeds?
Wow. What a question.
That's why I didn't want to tell you these earlier.
No, do you know what? One word, size. Absolutely huge club. I mean, let's make no mistake about this. For all the sort of bad press it's had over the decades, this club is absolutely ginormous. And that's probably why I paused over the away game, home game thing, because going away is great with the Leeds fans, when you're there, because the following is unique. Size is the one thing, but it's unique. It's the attitude of being the backs against the wall. Nobody likes us, sort of, we don't care. I know Millwall use that phrase, but there is a bit of that about Leeds. It's like, go on then, we're Leeds, we don't care whether you like us or not, sort of thing. We are who we are. Nothing's manufactured. It's just a unique atmosphere. But I'd say one word, size. Absolutely huge.
I worked in software for a while, and traveling all around the world. You'd be in taxis, conversation goes to football. Who do you support? You'd say Leeds. Leeds. And you could be in Bahrain or Mozambique, and everyone knew Leeds. And this was when they were at a low ebb. So there is something special about them. There is something special. So the size, I agree. Massive club. Right. So getting personal here, Adam. Would you rather live in the Wirral or Yorkshire?
Wow. I couldn't afford the Wirral now. Oh, wow, that is so tough. Yorkshire's my home now because I've been here so long, and it's where my family is and what have you. But if I could choose, if I could buy a house and just plonk it somewhere in the two, I think I'd go back home to the Wirral. Yeah, so I'm going to say Wirral.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your honesty.
I miss the sea.
The sea?
Yeah, grew up near the sea.
It's not quite the Pacific Highway on the west coast of the state. It's the Wirral. Okay, so you'd plonk your house in the Wirral. Well, I appreciate your honesty, Adam. Two more to go. You've done fantastic commentary for Leeds United for 15 years. But what is one sporting event you would love to cover as a commentator?
Right. Okay. I'm going to go away from football. I'd love to commentate on the open golf. That would be the other sport I'd love to do. And I've been fortunate to work on a few opens, but not from a commentary point of view. So that would be the other one. It'd be the open golf, definitely. Which course though as well would I want to do it on? I've been to St Andrews, and I know that it's going to be there this year, the 150th, but Royal Liverpool, I'd want to do it there. The open golf at Royal Liverpool, just down the road from where I grew up.
Quelle surprise. Okay. A final one, Adam. Final one. Who would you like to meet? Murray or Messi?
Murray.
Right answer.
I'll tell you Murray, because I'm always interested in people that have probably had a really bad press against for many, many years, and they've come through it and they've proved just what a great champion they are and what a solid guy is. And not, I mean, as we speak, he's about to face Djokovic, and he's just come through at 34, metal hip. Nobody's given him a chance. You know, he's in the Madrid Open, and he's won already against the odds. I think what an incredible guy. I'd love to get into his mindset of how he has remained such a competitive guy through all his setbacks, and how he's coped with all the bad publicity, which he has had over the years too.
Yeah.
And he actually seems underneath it all like a really decent guy, you know, a really decent guy. You know, much as Leeds were painted as dirty Leeds for years, totally incorrectly, Murray gets a reputation for being, if a bit miserable or what have you, a bit down, what have you. I bet he's not like that at all when you get to meet him. And yeah, Murray over Messi, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think he suffered for some bad press experiences when he was younger, so he's kept his counsel a little bit more. But for me, he seems to be spot on a lot of issues. He's got the right attitude and approach to issues. He's a big advocate of gender equality. One of the rare male players who hired a female coach, and stands up for women all over the place. But it's not just that issue. There's a number of other issues where he just seems to get the tone just right, and he's blossomed the last few years, I think, in the public consciousness. It was all back at that Wimbledon final where he lost to Federer, interviewed by Sue Barker, and he was very emotional and crying, and he was talking about the crowd, saying people say that the crowd make it harder for me, you make it easier for me, all the support you've given. And I think that really changed public perception, and he's reached the heights that we haven't had for many years in tennis, and a great example. And I use it to all the kids about someone who never gives up, someone who gives his best efforts everywhere. And yeah, I think he's a great example to all of us, not just within tennis. So great to hear you made the right decision on that one, even if you would rather live still on the Wirral.
Yeah, John, it's great, and I think the fact that you've got this community going as well is superb. I mean, you know, I've looked at stuff that you do on your pages, on your Facebook page, and I see the videos that go out, and the stuff that you do just encourage people to be the best that they can be is fantastic. And I know you've got strong views on a lot of things as well. So, and quite right, you know, that you should, and I can see why you've got some, you know, synergy there with Andy Murray too. So yeah, it's brilliant what you do. It's brilliant what you're doing. And I think, yeah, just giving everybody a chance. I mean, I think now I'm a dad as well, and we talked about my daughter before, Danielle, and I would hate her not to get the chance to do something just because she's a girl. You know, it's just ridiculous to think it, but you know, that's how it's been. It's how it still is for many, many people. It's beyond my comprehension now, Jonty, that this should be an issue, but sadly it is.
Well, I think we're going in the right direction. But there's still sometimes generational attitudes that need to change and need to shift, and we need to be honest in our approach on things. And sometimes there's a veneer of how things are, and beneath the surface there's still some old attitudes. And I think especially fathers of daughters, fathers who've got daughters, appreciate the situation that's going on. Like, you know, I have a daughter and I want to make sure that she has as many, if not more, chances than I've had in life. And that's how it should be for everyone. It takes time. I think we're getting there, and hopefully the Danielles of this world overtake us in what they achieve and the opportunities they have in life. So well done, Andy Murray, for being a champion for women's rights. Thank you so much, Adam, for giving us some time here for the debrief on Cameron. I'm sure he'll be very glad to hear your views. Thank you so much for all the great coverage you give for us with Leeds. And I hope you're not left too brokenhearted when Leeds stay up and Everton slide down. But there's some split loyalties there. And I know you'll get some stick along the way. But thank you for everything you do for Leeds United and the coverage you give. I think it's brilliant. And thank you so much for giving us time today on the show.
Oh, it's been great. Really, really enjoyed it. And it's nice getting an insight into another sport as well. So we both appreciate it. I know Cameron did.
All right. Cheers, Adam.
Thanks, John T.